You're listening to episode 59 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Amy Slater about how to optimize postpartum recovery no matter how old your kids are. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm your host as always, and today we have a special episode with someone who just happens to live down the road from me. Very ironically, we haven't met in person yet, but hopefully that will change soon. And it's just really cool to be able to meet someone in the space that lives so close by. I don't live in an area of the country that's like a hub for online business owners or nutritionists or anything like that. So whenever I meet someone who's local, it's always extra exciting for me. And I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation today, especially if you're someone who has either thought about having a baby, is currently pregnant, or has already had babies in general and wants to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to recover your health after having your baby. So I'm super excited to welcome to the show today, Amy Slater. Amy is a mom of 2 sets of twins, a women's health coach, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and passionate advocate for women speaking their needs to feel like their whole self again. Amy works with moms 1 year to 30 years postpartum to help them reconnect with their core and pelvic floor from the inside out using an integrated approach. Amy has both the personal health recovery story as well as extensive professional training. She has a bachelor's of science in nutrition and dietetics, a fellowship in applied functional science. She's a practitioner of functional diagnostic nutrition, 20 years of personal training experience, and over 1,000 hours of continuing education in women's health and human movement. Amy loves to run, cycle, lift, hike, swim, garden, and play with her kids. She lives in Holly Springs, North Carolina, which is where I live, with her husband, 2 9-year-old boys, and 2 5-year-old girls, and her golden lab named Judge. Definitely got a busy life there with 2 sets of twins, but Amy has a lot of passion for the work that she's doing. And ironically, and maybe not so ironically, Amy's been following me for a while, even before she got so passionate about women's health and postpartum recovery. And it's just really, really awesome to see the ripple effect of the work that I've been doing for, like 8 years now in this space, being able to see other practitioners and providers and coaches like Amy being able to use the information that I have also discovered in my time learning about women's health and learning what true women's health looks like, being able to use that information to make a big impact on the world of health and to help women especially recover from having a baby and to make sure that their needs are getting met so that they are able to feel great and to be the best mom that they can be with the best health that they can have. So I love Amy's passion. I love her personal story. It aligns so well with so many women that I've worked with in the past. And I think many of you will really connect with her as she's gone through the journey of being depleted, being overtrained, being underfed, struggling to get pregnant, needing to use fertility medication to get pregnant in the first place, to a place now where she's far more knowledgeable about the way she needs to take care of her body to be healthy. And she's really doing a great job getting that information out to other women so that they can go through the pregnancy experience with greater health and strength. So again, super pumped to have Amy on the show with us today. And without further ado, here is Coach Amy Slater. All right, everybody. Well, I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Amy Slater. How are you doing today, Amy?
I'm great. Thanks, Laura.
And Amy and I were just talking about the fact that we live probably 10 to 15 minutes apart from each other.
Yes, we do.
Not a lot of people in Holly Springs, North Carolina, but, I think it's getting a little bit more popular to live here. And just in general, North Carolina is a great place to live. So it's really cool to meet someone who is local. So I know that you have a lot of different passions between HPA axis dysfunction, amenorrhea, gut dysfunction, all the things that I definitely have a lot of experience and passion and have been talking about that stuff for a long time too. So it's really cool to meet someone who also has those passions. I know that you said, and this is really going to be the theme of our podcast today, that a lot of the work that you do centers around postpartum moms. So I would love for you to share your story with the audience if they don't know you yet, just so they can get to know you a little better. How did you become so passionate about supporting postpartum moms in their healing after having a baby?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So I have two sets of twins. My first set of twins, they're going to be 10. They're boys in November. And when I had them, after I'd had them, I was in fitness for a really long time. I had already been in fitness for 10 years, and I had no idea about the postpartum experience because I had been a professional cyclist and I had trained athletes, and that was where my background. And so I had no idea about postpartum. And after I had had the boys, I had a huge diastasis, which is a separation of the two rectus bellies. And it was very deep and very wide. And I was a very small person and very muscular, but I had very little tensegrity or connective tissue integrity. I went into the pregnancy depleted. And I also had amenorrhea at that point. So I needed to use ovulation stimulation to produce the pregnancy. And so going into the state that I know now is depleted caused a lot of the postpartum dysfunction that I had. Looking back, I also had postpartum depression, but I didn't know it. And I didn't really realize it until about 11 to 12 months afterwards, even after my 6-week screening, which was at a university medical center with one of the top maternal fetal medicine doctors in the country, still didn't screen me for diastasis.
Wow.
It was pretty significant. Nutritionally, I wasn't sure how to navigate until I went to work with a mentor of mine out in California, and he steered me towards what at that time was the beginnings of the paleo diet. And then I started to learn and apply and integrate, and I started to heal. My hormones started to regulate. I started to feel better emotionally. I started to feel better mentally. I felt like I was coming back on board, but it was taking a really long time. My gut was a big time mess. And looking back, I probably had a lot of also hypothyroidism at that point, just that it coordinates with the postpartum period, but also with the dysfunction that I had going into the pregnancy, which is the key there. And then I started learning and applying my background in movement and learning about fascia and fascial integrity and how to really bring connective tissue back on board, and learning that diastasis is not so much about closing the gap, so to speak, but also narrowing the depth and improving the body's ability to tension across various lines of force. And so I started to integrate those principles, and I used tools like Viper Pro. I used Pelvicor Pro, lots of different tools, vibration technology. And I just invested in these things. So instead of buying like clothes and things, like little things for the kids, like things for myself, I bought exercise equipment. I bought the things I needed to heal. I started learning more about gut health and adrenal health. I worked with a functional medicine doctor, and I started to really heal. But it took a while to take all these different components and piece them together. And that was very difficult at that time. Now looking back, how long that journey was, but I learned a lot along the way. Then I had a second set of twins. When the boys were 4, I got pregnant with my second set of twins. At that point, I still had no cycle. And so it was a one-shot deal, and it worked. And I had 2 healthy girls, but the pregnancy at that point was all paleo. It was very Weston Price driven. So I used a lot of Nourishing Traditions background. Sally Fallon's messaging was really strong in that pregnancy, and my training was very integrated. So I came out of it with a significant diastasis, but I was much easier to heal. I was able to come out of that pregnancy better, functionally, but hormonally and gut issues were really, really prevalent. And I really didn't know until at least 2 years afterwards what was going on when I started doing functional testing and realizing I had H. pylori. I had a lot of dysfunction in terms of reduced stomach acid, mineral deficiencies, because I nursed the girls for 2.5 years afterwards. So it was through this journey that I realized, and also with my background in training, that moms need more than just the movement piece, because the stress component and the hormonal dysregulation in postpartum is massive. And a lot of times it doesn't just evaporate. You need to have intervention. And so that's where I formed my method. And I'm still kind of, tweaking it as we go. But I work with moms now that their babies are usually 3 or older, and they're still not feeling themselves. They either are still leaking or they're just starting to, because they're starting to become active and realizing that they have pelvic floor dysfunction, or they realize now they have diastasis and they're not sure what to do and are scared. And also they're not sleeping, we're bloating, nothing feels good, just all of the things that kind of go under that bucket.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I bet, some of that stuff a lot of women think is, oh, well, it's normal. I just had a baby, that first year postpartum, which some of it is obviously, there is some normalcy to some of that stuff. But once you're getting 2 years postpartum, 3 years postpartum, it's maybe this isn't normal and maybe this is something I need to be working on. Do you feel like there's something that you can pinpoint that, before you got pregnant the first time contributed to the depletion during the pregnancy?
Yes, that's a really good question. And that's where a lot of my messaging comes in now as well, is your nourishment should start 2 years pre. And so many of my moms that I work with now are planning baby number 2. And so we're working on, giving themselves that window of really supplying the body with the nutrients it needs, because you're preparing for the postpartum period, those 2 years before. And not only that, obviously for the health of the baby, but all the things that you do before, that helps with the after. And that's what moms, many times it's hard to see that, especially if you're a young mom and you're that's not top of mind. And you're I'll just take my prenatal, I'll be good. But it's so much more than that. So yes, depletion in terms of not having really nutrient dense foods, or you are eating what you think is healthy and you're having a lot of whole grains and you're having a lot of, things that may be irritating to your gut, and you go into it and you're not able to absorb your food, and you're going to it depleted in that way as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I work with a lot of women who are dealing with amenorrhea, and their doctors just want to go straight to the fertility medication, which obviously can work to get somebody pregnant, right? Nobody would say that that's completely not going to work for somebody, but I do get really concerned about how many women, because they have amenorrhea, so many of them are experiencing amenorrhea because of nutrient deficiencies and under eating, over exercising, all of that. And they don't realize that it's not just about not getting pregnant. It's also what kind of, negative outcomes do you experience during the pregnancy, right after the pregnancy, for apparently, like you're mentioning, years after the pregnancy that could have maybe been avoided or at least minimized by being fully nourished before they get pregnant in the first place, which again, I would never blame a woman for having postpartum depression or anything like that. Of course it's not their fault, but if you're going into the pregnancy with, hormone dysfunction or gut dysfunction due to poor lifestyle choices, which, as I'm sure you agree with me, what people don't even realize they're poor because they're just doing what the average American woman would be doing with even quote unquote healthy diet. And they go into it again, whether or not they needed medication to get pregnant in the first place, they go into it already kind of depleted, and then growing a human or 2 humans twice in your case, that takes a lot of resources. And if your body doesn't have the resources fully available, then it's going to pull it from your body. And then, it's no wonder people end up having such a hard time recovering after pregnancy, because it's a really
energetically and nutriently demanding process that I don't think most women are really even remotely prepared for if they're not taking specific actions that you're just mentioning. So I don't want to go down too far in that rabbit hole because
I think it's important. I have a cycle now. I ovulate now. Every doctor told me, including my fertility endocrinologist, I can't remember what they're called technically right now, but she told me that you will never have a cycle again. After 15 years without a cycle, that axis has been burnt. Well, boo, it's wrong because I have one and it's very normal and it's been regular now for at least 3 years. But I could have undone a lot of struggle that I had I not have gone into the pregnancy. And it was because 100% over exercise and under eating, which I didn't have a clue at the time. I was like the picture of fitness. I was strong. I was great at my sport and I loved it because that was my image. So usually, and that was a whole nother ball game coming into that or pregnancy, because now you're like a mom. You're no longer like this fitness person, So there's a lot more to that story then. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very, very important. So if you're a mom and you're listening and you're thinking baby number 2, focus on that nutrition big time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, even for the women that are just thinking about getting pregnant, because again, if you've been told, well, you'll never have a cycle or, and I hear that so much with the women that I've worked with. It really makes me angry, actually. Like, I'm not going to get too emotional about it, but it's something that I think is total nonsense for most women. And they don't do any sort of digging into what the lifestyle factors are that could be contributing to that. They're just like, well, it's done. You're just going to need the medication to get pregnant and that's it. And, again, I don't want to use your story as like this big warning for women who are dealing with amenorrhea and they want to get pregnant. But I do think it's really awesome that you now are getting a regular menstrual cycle, because one, that shows that there's never a reason to think that you can't get yours back. Like, unless you literally don't have your ovaries or your uterus, it's like, if the machinery is there, then there's a chance that it could function. Right. So I think that's really great. And then also just using your experience to kind of help women that haven't gone through that yet to avoid that as much as possible and not make the same mistake. And it wasn't even your fault necessarily. It was like doctors didn't catch it. Nobody told you. Like, it was a very normal way of living. A lot of women live that way. So it's like you wouldn't have known that you were missing something until after your pregnancy, you're not recovering well. And it's like, it's not too late at that point, but it certainly is a lot harder if you wait until after pregnancy to get well nourished versus if you go into the pregnancy well nourished.
Right. And that's what's always drawn me to you, Laura, is that you're very nourishment driven. And there was a time, like even when I was early in my healing and I was listening to your other podcast, like that was flipping switches in my head. Like this, it's okay to eat. It's okay to nourish yourself. And as women, we think we have to eat like mice. I mean, it's ridiculous. We need to nourish ourselves. It's okay to be strong. It's okay to eat. And you should want to feel good when you're eating. You should enjoy your food.
Yeah.
And I think you are a powerhouse in that message space. So I think that's really, really awesome.
Oh, well, thanks, Amy. And for me, I'm like, not only is it okay, it's actually really good to eat.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping at some point that message will start to become like totally infiltrated in our culture. But until it does, we're going to keep talking about it. Me and Amy are going to keep discussing it. And I think that's great. Like your own personal story, being able to use that experience to help others is so valuable. And, I work with a lot of my business coaching clients in the health and nutrition space that are using their personal experience to really shape how they help their clients, which is really cool. Why do you think so many women struggle with even seeking help for things like diastasis and pelvic floor problems?
I think it's lack of knowledge. And then again, most women are told, like I was told at 1 year, you're pretty much where you will be for the rest of your life, which again is totally 150% untrue. You can make gains, you can improve fascial integrity, and it takes anywhere from 6 months in an ideal optimal environment to 2 years for fascia to recover its integrity. So in that thought process, you're thinking about sleep needs to be at its optimum, which until that child is probably 18, you are not going to have optimal sleep because mine are 10 and 6 and the sleep is still not optimal. And when everything is in alignment, the other thing is I think they don't know where to go. And then time is a really big one, and expense, fear of paying out of pocket, fear of just, okay, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go and someone's going to like look at myself and what's going to happen. You know, it's uncomfortable talking about that. And it makes women, it's very vulnerable, and it's just not spoken of. I mean, when you go in for your doctor's appointment, usually with your OB, you're like, you know, you're not really talking about it. Usually they don't ask you. They ask you what you're using for birth control, but they don't ask you if you have any trouble with your pelvic floor.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think I'm the weird one that has like multiple friends that are like pelvic floor experts and stuff. So it's like most women don't even have any exposure to that kind of thing. And even just pre-pregnancy, I think it's an issue that a lot of women struggle with. And it's just like weird to me that this isn't a conversation that more medical professionals are having with their clients, even if they're not directly helping them with their pelvic floor issues. The fact that they're not even asking about it, how I don't understand, unless you're just like Googling stuff, how you would even come across that information in the first place. So, I definitely agree that we need to have a more, not only does it have to be normal, but it has to be like encouraged in the postpartum world.
Yeah. And it's been normalized. So I remember like when I got my cycle back and I hadn't had to go and purchase anything, any kind of pad or tampon in years. So I went to the store and I was like looking down the aisles and I couldn't find any feminine products. It was aisles and aisles of diapers, an entire aisle of diapers and continence pads. And I was like, what is this? And it really was like you were let out of jail and the world looks different. That was like what it was. And it was so bizarre to me that there was nothing there except all of this. And that just shows you how normal it has become. Just slip on your panty liner and go to your jumping jacks and you'll be good.
Yeah. So again, it's not that we want to normalize the recovery process, not normalizing you'll just always be like this kind of answer. And that just drives me nuts when people say, well, this is the way it's always going to be. Like literally, I don't think that that's true in almost any situation. Like I said, unless you like literally have something amputated, to say that it's never going to get better. I just think that that's completely ignoring how amazing the human body is and how well it can recover from different illnesses and different disease states when it's given the right tools, right? So it's just, it really, really grinds my gears when people say that something is permanent when it's not. Like, it's not permanent. It doesn't have to be permanent. It will be permanent if you do nothing about it. Like, if you don't do anything to actually make it better, then yeah, it will be permanent, but that doesn't mean that you should just give up on yourself. So as far as the core goes, I know that, there's a lot of different perspectives on core training in general. And I know that when a woman has a baby, obviously there's a lot of shifts and changes in the structure of their core for obvious reasons. Why do women need to be working on their entire body when they're retraining the core after having a baby?
So that's a great question because we are all integrated. If you think about fascia's, it's interwoven. If you ever find a way to study it, the best way to look up is Dr. Robert Schlepp. He's done a lot of really amazing work. And also Gil Headley has something called a fuzz speech. It's on YouTube. It's very famous. And it gives you a really strong idea of how powerful fascia is. And this fascial network is woven all throughout our body. So every movement we do affects our core, everything. And so if we are working on that fascial integrity, it has to be global, system-wide. But then you also have to have local integrity. So that's where some of the more traditional abdominal exercises do have their place, but then it has to be integrated throughout. So the training that I use in my method is we use loaded movement in all planes of motion, all different intensities, all different angulations with a variety of speeds, direction, forces, because all of that lays down more connective tissue. and connective tissue lays down along lines of force. So the more force inputs we can put in, the greater the integrity of that connective tissue. So if you have a shoulder dysfunction, or if you have, like me, a tight right hip that doesn't like to rotate, that is strongly connected to a diastasis that will not heal, because then every time you take a step, that pulls at that linea alba asymmetrically and doesn't allow it to heal completely. So that doesn't mean don't ever go for a walk. It means work on it. Work on the stability of the hip. Work on the hip in all three planes of motion, because it could be that hip or even the big toe or the ankle on that side that's causing the pelvic floor dysfunction. So when you are thinking about the core, usually with most women, I don't even start with the core. We start on global strength, global integrity, breath work.
And just for our listeners who aren't familiar with the term, do you mind just defining fascia? Because I know what it means, but I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page as us.
So it's a fibrous connective tissue, and it basically wraps the body. It's like the skin on a chicken that you would cut off, the slimy white stuff. That it's a membrane, a network that runs throughout the entire body, in between layers of muscle, in between through organs, wraps around everything. It is the structure of the body. If you took away fascia, we would have nothing. It is very responsive. It's very proprioceptively rich, meaning that it's very neural driven. It responds really well to load. So that's where, using, like I said, the tool Viper Pro is so powerful, because you can load along so many different angles. And that's what's so important now for women when we're at home, is we have to load. You cannot be afraid of those weights, because that's what gives you stability. That's what most women are craving postpartum, is we want that stability back. We don't want to feel like a loose bag of bones, because everything's stretched out, you lose that integrity, and that fascia can get it back for you.
Yeah. I feel like most people are familiar with the plantar fascia, which is the bottom of your foot, because they get the fasciitis, yes. But they don't necessarily think about fascia being everywhere, and, it getting loose when you do have pregnancy, which again is normal. It has to stretch for you to have that, pregnancy, expansion of your uterus and everything. But the speed at which it returns to the appropriate, size and shape is going to be dependent on a lot of the things that you were just mentioning. So, and that's really interesting that you were mentioning the different loads and everything, because I feel like and I haven't had a baby yet. So, I'll come back to you in a couple of years and let you know, what my experience was like. But I feel like a lot of the women that I know that have been pregnant recently, a lot of times they're being told to not lift anything heavier than 5 pounds or something. And I know the 6 weeks postpartum, obviously there's a pretty significant period of time where you do need to be really cautious, but even up to the year postpartum where they're told not to lift more than just a couple pounds. What's your perspective on that?
No way. All my moms that I'm working with that are pregnant, I'm like, you've got to be able to lift at least 20 pounds in multiple angulations before that baby arrives, because they're going to be 20 pounds before you know it. You're going to have the car seat, and nobody cares if you're carrying that car seat in and that baby is a week old. You have to be able to handle load and manage pressure. That can be achieved. I have moms that have not been exercising. I have one that I'm working with now that has not been exercising, and we're building up. And she's like, I don't think I can, but you have to be able to. Otherwise, you put yourself at risk, and it makes it much more dysfunctional. So, but everybody's individual, and you can't just go out there and start powerlifting and doing CrossFit and, back squatting if you can't manage pressure. So there's really big forerunners in this field, like Brianna Battles, Jessie Mundell. They're really amazing speakers and educators in terms of women and lifting and the importance of lifting during pregnancy, and encouraging that confidence to be able to do that. And certainly as you get further along, you're not going to be lifting and going over extreme ranges of motion because of the relaxin, but you can absolutely lift, and it helps that delivery. Because for me, I lifted throughout both pregnancies, especially the second one with the girls, and I had a VBAC with a pretty significant diastasis, but I was able to deliver 2 babies with a C-section on the first one. So everybody's different, but yes, you can. And yes, you should lift weights while pregnant.
Yeah. Well, and it's just nuts to me because it's like, don't lift more than 5 pounds, but your baby's like already more than 5 pounds in most cases, like as soon as you have it. So, and you know, not to even speak about you already have a kid, like if you have a toddler or something running around, like you can't like not lift the child for a year or something. So it's just weird to me that that's what message women are getting. Cause it's like, first of all, it's so, I don't want to say condescending, but it's like, yeah, to be like, nothing too heavy. It's like, they're not going to break. Like they obviously are needing a little extra support and some protection, especially in that first 6 weeks. But it's not like, you know, oh my gosh, don't lift while you're pregnant because you're going to hurt yourself. It's like, well, what do you think you're doing if you like are lifting a toddler while you're pregnant, right? Like you're already lifting. So, you know, why not do it in a way that helps, you know, make sure your body's in balance and that you're like keeping everything stable the way it needs to be. Now, before we started recording, you and I were talking about the fact that a lot of your clients are actually women that have older kids, and particularly like elementary school and maybe even through high school, that they're really struggling with these health issues. And we were saying how it's like, that's when they finally realize that like, okay, this isn't normal. It's not going away. It really needs to be dealt with. Why do you feel like this population is so underserved in the health community?
Again, I think it's isolation. You know, once that baby is out of like the super cute stage, everybody stops like hanging out and asking how you're doing. It's like now you should have your stuff together because they're in elementary school. So, and PS, you know, it's too late to start talking about pelvic floor. And now it's normal. So just put your panty liner in. And you're just tired and you're getting close to perimenopause and you're probably starting to go through the change. And it's like, and it's just this and it's just that. And it's okay that you're just a little constipated. Just do some Kegels, eat your fiber, drink your water. And just, you know, that's just how it is. You're getting older. And that's honestly the conversation that I have with 90% of my women that I work with. And it makes me so sad, because it becomes normal and it's brutal. And especially in this environment with COVID and the kids all home and you don't have a voice, like you want to say, this is so hard for me. And I really have no idea what to do because I'm constipated. I'm not losing weight. I eat, most of my moms that come to me are like 900 to 1200 calories a day and gaining weight or not losing a thing. That's not normal. That should not be happening. They're irritable all the time. And they may leak a little when they laugh, but it's nothing extreme. And they have no idea what to do. Thyroid labs have all been checked and they're all normal, of course. So it's like, okay, when I first started doing this, it was like, all right, we need to move. We need to start exercising. And I quickly realized these deeper, you need more. We need to find out the real whys behind it. Now, certainly this is not medical diagnoses, but it's investigative work. And it's giving you using functional labs to look at, okay, what's going on with your gut after now 6 years of stress. And having kids is very joyful, but it's also very unpredictable, consistent stress because your life is no longer your own, right? So there's always that, and that can wreak havoc on a gut. And I've never had a gut test come back completely clean. Like most of these women have parasites, bacterial overgrowth. And then once you clear that, the anxiety decreases. They start absorbing their food. They're able to eat a normal amount. They want to eat. Energy starts to go up. And it's like you put glasses on for the first time. It's like, this is what my life is supposed to be like. Why didn't I do this sooner? And it's so powerful. So I feel like to answer your question, why it's not talked about, it's because it's normalized. All of those symptoms are normal for women. And if it was a man, honestly, I don't want to get too back and forth here, but would that be normal? I don't know, but we just have to endure it, right? Because that's what we should be doing as moms, be the hero.
Well, and I can only imagine what's already difficult to do, which is be a mom, be a parent. How much harder is it if you're physically depleted all the time, right? It's like, we're not saying that, oh, fix your gut health and everything will be like perfect with your kids. But like, I know for me, anytime that I'm like having hormonal weirdness or like, and I don't experience that stuff a lot anymore, but like, you know, even if I'm in a certain phase of my menstrual cycle, I can tell that I'm not as patient with my husband and that kind of thing. And it's like, I'm glad that that's only for like 24 hours, because I can't even imagine if that was like all the time that you had that level of like emotional volatility, fatigue, just like feeling like garbage all the time. And then also having to like make sure you're keeping small humans alive and happy and, you know, dealing with all the craziness of 2020. It's like, I can't even imagine what that would be like. So it is something where it's probably very common for it to be pretty poor in general, or that you're just like completely ignoring it, but it certainly is not like, does not need to be normal. And we should probably talk about it in the sense that it isn't normal and you shouldn't just be putting up with it, because it's not like, I think when people accept something as being, well, this is the way it is, then it completely takes any sort of power out of their hands to do anything about it. And that's like, if there's like a common thread of everything that I do between like health stuff, business coaching, everything is really just helping people understand the level of power that they have in their circumstances. That doesn't mean they have full control. Obviously, this year has taught us none of us have full control over everything or most things, but you know, being able to take control over the things that we can control, which tends to be our thoughts and our actions, right? So if you're thinking this is permanent or this is the way it is, and your actions are reflecting that belief, then of course you're going to feel like crap all the time and you're not going to get better. So yeah, I feel like women, especially moms of like multiple kids that are older and there's like more stuff going on because they're like, you know, no longer just like babies. They don't really see their needs as being important. They really put their kids' needs completely above their own. And I get it. Like I get that, you know, that's kind of the sacrifice that people make when they become parents, that they're putting another human's needs above their own. But I think to completely sacrifice your health with the guise of, oh, I'm doing it for my kids. It's like, well, wouldn't you be able to like have a better experience as a mom if you were taking care of your health, or if you were, you know, getting to the root of these issues that are holding you back from really having the best possible experience as a mom? So I'm really glad that you're focusing on that group, because I don't know if they're underserved because the medical community ignores them, or because they just themselves don't feel like they deserve to put that energy into themselves. But it's probably a combination of the two. Do you agree with that?
I think they don't know where to go, or they ask. Every single one of my clients has asked their doctor, I don't feel right. I need to get my thyroid tested, and it gets tested, and there's no diss on the medical doctors because they're going on their ranges that they have, but they're off, and they don't realize that it's the terrible food that they've been eating and the Cheetos and goldfish off their kids' plates that's caused the liver dysfunction. Not that goldfish caused, you know what I mean? They've just not been fueling their body properly. And the stress. And so, yes, I feel like it's more to the fact that they just don't know they haven't been assessed properly and in an integrated way. And it's speaking to the children. I mean, the earlier you intervene and address this, the earlier you can get those kids on board. And when you have that responsibility in being a role model for your kids, because if you're walking around and feeling terrible all the time, those kids are going to pick up on that vibe, and guess how they're going to act? Not well. And then that just increases your stress. And when you feel terrible, all you're going to want to do is go through the drive-through. You don't want to prepare any meals because you don't want to deal with the battle with the food, with the kids. And so it just fuels that fire. So in all of my messaging, it's not a matter of trying to be the perfect parent, because there is no perfect. It's just really getting those kids on board with eating whole foods, being active, getting in the sun, you know, getting away from electronics as much as you can. This is like the year of the screen, but it's so hard. I mean, my kids are on the screen too, way too much. But if you can get them on board, it makes your journey so much easier, because you're not fighting them constantly. And then boom, all of a sudden they're teenagers and they have terrible acne, or they have a lot of food sensitivities. And then you have a whole nother host of issues. And you can work on that at the same time if you jumped on this, you know, earlier.
Mm-hmm. So what do you wish that you knew about the postpartum period before you had your babies?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I wish I knew it was okay to give myself a full 2 years to recover. They say 1 year for a singleton for the organs to even go back into place, and a full 2 years with a twin pregnancy. That's 2 years. So after the boys, this is so embarrassing, but I'm going to say it. I was running at like 8 weeks after having the boys with this diastasis, because that was what I did. And I was like, I want to get back in shape, because my mindset was body image, body image, body image. I should be. Why shouldn't I be back in shape? And so then what comes after that? The exercise, or goes along with it. I'm going to start restricting my calories. And so I obviously knew better the second time around, because I didn't ever want to feel like I did with the boys again. But I wish I knew to give myself to have that patience. And I wish I knew to focus on the foundations of movement, and really give myself the year, and to stay off of any social media, and looking at, using the pressure of get your body back, all those kind of messages. It's just so hard on women, because you can line up 10 postpartum women and every single one of them is going to have a different journey.
My brother's wife's family was mentioning that her doctor, and this was 20 something years ago, but her doctor was saying that she should do her best to have her second child within a year and a half of having her first, because it was such a weird explanation. He was apparently saying that it's better for the siblings' relationships if they're closer together. And I was like, well, first of all, that literally doesn't make any sense. I'm pretty close in age to my siblings, and we fought like cats and dogs when we were growing up. So I'm pretty sure that that's not true. And then even just the nutritional recovery, the depletion that all women give birth depleted, right? There's really no way to get out of a pregnancy not at least a little depleted from a nutritional perspective. And that's in the perfect scenario, right? So I feel like so many women, they need that time to repair and recover and nourish their bodies and get stronger and stuff like that before they get pregnant. And it is weird to hear these weird, doctor commentary about, oh, don't wait too long to have another kid. It's well, if anything, we probably would be better off waiting a little bit of time to have the second or third kid, because it's you need that extra time to recover. And certainly with your fitness habits, making sure that you're not jumping right back into stuff so fast. Because even, we were talking about the 6 weeks is kind of the guideline of just, don't do anything for 6 weeks to recover. But then after that, there's so few. Well, I think it's getting better, but I'm sure 10 years ago, there was very little guidelines about what to do after 6 weeks. And you probably thought, okay, 6 weeks is done. Let me get back into it. So, and I've heard people, and I think this was BirthFit was saying this, but I've heard some postpartum experts say that you're really true postpartum for at least 12 months after your baby. And then obviously, as we were mentioning before we started recording, technically you're always postpartum once you've had a baby, right? So that year is actually like you said, very important to be acting differently than you would act if you had not had a baby or were 10 years postpartum. But even after that year, you're not just magically back to normal, right? There is still some stuff you need to be paying attention to. So you were mentioning a little bit ago about some of the investments that you made in your recovery postpartum. So what would you suggest women who are either planning on getting pregnant or pregnant now, or already have been pregnant and know that they want to have another child? What support do you think women should be investing in for optimal postpartum care?
I would say for sure, make sure you get in alignment with a women's health or a pelvic health physical therapist. Even before you get pregnant, go in and see them, because then they can see where your baseline is. They can see where you're starting. You can learn movement techniques. You can learn breathing techniques, and then keep your care up throughout pregnancy, even if you do not have any problems. Even if you don't have any problems, right? It's because you can learn so much. And then investing in good quality nutrition and proper supplementation as directed by your provider. That's really important to make sure you stay on top of that. And then for the postpartum, obviously continuing with your pelvic health physical therapy, getting those appointments set up before you go in for delivery, getting that right away on the books. Most of them will want to wait 6 weeks. Some of them will do it earlier, but getting that in good check. And then in terms of equipment purchases, make sure you have tools to work out at home. Have your bands, have your free weights. There are some tools that I really love that are awesome investments, way better than a treadmill or a Peloton. They're both great pieces of equipment, but you want to be moving along all different angles. I love the Pelvic Core Pro. You can find it at pelvicsolutions.com. It's a tremendous tool. If you use the code AS Coach, you can get a discount. But that tool it helps you to move your hips and load the pelvic floor subconsciously. So you're not doing Kegels, you're using breath, you're using the loads, the mass and momentum of the body to functionally load the pelvic floor so that when you're moving in everyday life, that pelvic floor is still receiving that same stimulus and you don't have to consciously do it. Because in an exhausted state, which is pretty much the whole first year, you're not going to be able to stop, contract your pelvic floor, bend down and pick up baby. You're just going to bend over. And so to have that tissue tolerance, to have those neural pathways established, and you can use that tool all throughout pregnancy. I still use mine. And like I said, my kids are going to be 6 and I use it with all of my clients. And then also functional tools like 3-act slide is another really good one. It's like a slide board, but it's a circle. I don't know if you've seen that. And you go along all different angulations. So this, again, loads the pelvic floor safely. They have all kinds of training on it. And you can get a small one for your home. It's a great cardio workout. It's low impact, which is what you need. And it's just, it's such an amazing tool for the hips. And it's great for strengthening. And I can't say enough good things about it. It's a much better investment than walking straight on a treadmill. I'd rather you go outside and walk and put your investment into other things. And then, of course, a Viper Pro. Have you used a Viper yet?
I don't even think I have seen a Viper.
Okay. It's VIPR. We'll have to have a little workout date. That would be fun. VIPR and then Pro. And you can find them on Instagram, everywhere, but their training is loaded movement training. So it's loading the body in all dimensions of space. I use it with all of my pregnant moms. And then of course, postpartum. It's very versatile. You can take it everywhere. And it's a weighted cylinder. You'll see a lot of actually pelvic health PTs using it online because of how functional it is to the pelvic floor. So those are my go-tos in addition to like your staples. But really, if you arm yourself with these things that you need for the postpartum and forget half the stuff that you think the baby needs, according to Babies R Us, you're going to have a much better experience with what you need going into the postpartum period.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I just did a little Google search while you were mentioning the products. And I'm like, oh, I have seen this Viper thing. I've seen people using it. I've never used one before though. So
you would love it. It's really fun.
Yeah. We invested in some significant like powerlifting type of stuff in our garage this year because, gym's being shut down for a while. We were like, well, we're not going to be able to work out. We're not really sure when we're going to be able to work out. And it did take us a while to put everything together because of all the delays on shipping and everything. But now we have like a squat rack and barbells and I have like a hex bar and all these things. So trying to keep up with strength training, even, with all the stuff that's been going on this year. But I think some of these tools look really cool. And obviously you don't need like a whole setup to be able to use them. It looks pretty space friendly. So definitely have to be checking these things out. Anyway, so it's been really great to chat with you about this. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface of the knowledge that you have. And I know that we have a lot of like overlap of passion and everything. And you just have a little bit of a different experience of, I had adrenal issues and hormone issues in my 20s that had I gotten pregnant at that time, I would have been in a lot of trouble. So luckily I've kind of figured that stuff out. Hopefully before we have kids, I'm like, I still think there's things I could do better. Like I've actually been thinking about it recently. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that I really need to like clean up a little bit before we go into, having a kid at some point. So I know that there's so much that you could do, and I don't want anyone to think it's insurmountable or really difficult or anything. It's just a lot of women are just so unaware of this stuff that by the time they find out, it's because it's already a huge problem, not because they were like, trying to avoid it or prepared for it. So if you had like one piece of advice for someone who's listening and is like, oh my gosh, like this is really important, but I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, what would you say to them?
And they're wanting to have a baby?
Yeah, either their first baby or like another baby, like they want to have a baby at some point soon, and they feel like, I really want to do this the right way. What would you say to them?
Start with the foundations. Look at the Weston Price Foundation's teachings on how to fuel before pregnancy. It seems very old school and very foreign, and not 100% of it is true, but it's a good starting point, and it gives you a lot of parameters, and it's a lot better than what you're going to receive from your doctor, where they give you ice cream as your food group. I would start with that. So start with your food, get a really good handle on your nutrition, and also how you're going to start that first year, how you're going to feed yourself in postpartum. Really get confident in your nutrition, and then reach out to a pelvic health physical therapist and start talking to them. And you can gauge them and ask them right up front, how do you handle incontinence? Do you just recommend Kegels? And if they say yes, find a new one, because it's so far beyond that. And that's no criticism, but it's so far beyond that. And if you're going in and that's what they're only recommending, it's not effective at all. You cannot consciously contract the pelvic floor forever. You have to integrate other things. It's partially, but you can do a lot more with it. So nutrition, and get that pelvic health PT, because they're amazing and they do really good work.
Yeah. Well, and just speaking from personal experience, I know that pelvic floor issues are way more common than women realize. And like, even before you're pregnant, you'd be surprised, like all the lifestyle stuff, like sitting too much and a lot of times overtraining. Like I find that a lot of people that are dealing with pelvic floor issues, it's because they're overstressed, overtraining, like not balancing that stuff with rest and breathing and all of that. And which is super common, and a lot of times very common in the world of hypothalamic amenorrhea. So there's just a lot of stuff that we don't even think about our pelvic floor before we get pregnant. And even when we do get pregnant or have a baby, it's like barely talked about. So I definitely agree with getting a status report on your pelvic floor before you even get pregnant, because it's a lot easier to fix stuff before you have a baby growing in your uterus to like, add extra challenge to your pelvic floor functioning. Well, Amy, it's been really, really awesome chatting with you today. Where can our audience go to learn more about you or to get the next step in making sure that they're taking care of their needs, both pre having a baby and postpartum?
Yeah, thank you. I'm on Instagram at Amy Slater Coaching, and you see a lot of exercises there and good information. And then I have a website, amyslatercoaching.com. And then I have a freebie today that's a core integration series. So it's a series of movement patterns that you can integrate into your existing workout, or if you're just starting, you can do them alone, but they'd be great for a warm-up or just a recovery day. And you can, I think, Laura, you have the link for that. And then I have a free group. It's called Resilient Mamas on Facebook. So if you guys are interested in that, you can look that up and feel free to join.
Awesome. I love it. And I feel like I'm going to have to start looking at this stuff. I feel like I've kind of fallen off the mark this year with doing the things I need to do to keep my core happy. And with all the sitting this year, it's probably not in great shape. So I'll definitely be checking that out. And so we'll link to Amy's resources in the notes for this episode. This is episode 59. So if you go to lauraschoenfeldrd.com and go to the podcast section, you'll see on episode 59 all the links for Amy's stuff, including her free core integration series. Well, anyway, like I said, Amy, it was really great to chat with you today. Great to meet someone who has so many of the same passions and lives in the same town. Really cool. We'll definitely have to work out together sometime. And I really just thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom and expertise with the audience.
Thank you, Laura. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks to all of you who hung out with us for the last hour. Hopefully you found this useful, and make sure you reach out to Amy and let her know what you thought about our conversation today. And we will see you here next time on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey, everyone. Laura Schoenfeld here again. As you know, I absolutely love working with women from all walks of life
to help them create a purpose-filled life that they love. And over the past 2 years, I've expanded my mission to help nutrition business owners drop the hustle and come into alignment with their ideal business goals so they can work from a sense of ease and abundance and grow their income and their impact with joy. Unlike other business coaches, I have experience in the integrative and functional medicine, health, and wellness industry. And I've heavily invested in my own online business training and mentorship to get to a place where I'm now bringing in multiple six figures of revenue on an annual basis. Would you believe that I've invested over $130,000 in my own business development and mentorship over the past 7+ years? And honestly, that's just the financial cost of growing my business. It's taken me hours and hours of testing, learning, experimenting, and lots of failing to get to the place where I am today. After all this, I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty. There's no way I would be where I am today if I had not been willing to invest in my growth and to find the incredible mentors who have helped me accelerate my business faster than I ever imagined. The truth is that running an online business can be incredibly isolating. And if you don't have the right strategy or systems in place, it can take up nearly every waking minute of your free time, which is a recipe for a major health disaster and some serious business burnout. To grow your business to six figures and beyond without destroying your physical and mental health, you need support from both a mentor and a community of people who know what it's like to run a nutrition business online, who can help you succeed faster and easier than you'd be able to on your own. And that's why I'm so excited to offer a space for you to experience joyful and profitable business growth while being surrounded and supported by other driven nutritionists on the same thrilling journey of entrepreneurship. This opportunity is my annual mastermind. In the mastermind, you'll create relationships that will last a lifetime and achieve results in your business that you never would have imagined for yourself. If you want to learn more about this mastermind opportunity, go to lauraschoenfeld.com/mastermind. On that page, you'll find everything you need to know about what the mastermind includes and how to apply for your spot. I'd love to connect with you further about the business that you're growing and how the mastermind can help you support your goals. So go to lauraschoenfeld.com/mastermind to send in your application, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.